I'm Bob Hoffman here with Somi, who was one of the headliners for the Summer Solstice Jazz Festival, coming back to East Lansing, performing at Wharton Center.
Yes.
Somi, welcome to East Lansing.
Thank you.
What do you think so far performing here?
Wonderful. I always love being back in the Midwest, and as I told you, I grew up in Illinois, as you may know. So it's wonderful to be here and be so close to home and meet new people and new faces. So it's great.
And even though you grew up in Illinois, you have so many worldly influences.
Absolutely.
And bringing that whole African jazz back. Talk
Yes.
about that.
Well, I try to really kind of share all of those influences. So being from Rwanda, being from Uganda, living in New York City, having traveled to many places, right? So I've traveled to Paris and other places all over the world. Thankfully, the music has been generous enough to take me to so many different places, and really just trying to tell those stories that I encounter, and stories that inspire my heart, and stories of my own life.
As an artist, compare yourself now to 5 years ago, and then compare yourself what you're going to be like in 5 years. What do you want to be like?
Wow. I would say 5 years ago, I was still growing, and I'm still growing now. I think it's an ongoing journey. I think that's what music is, and that's what voice is. Understanding your body and your instrument as we change and age, and whatever it is that our body is experiencing, that affects our voice. So it's all about kind of moving with that and being open to that sort of malleability in our creative expression. So 5 years ago, I was praying for a record deal.
And you have 3 of them.
Yes, since then I've had 2. The first one was totally independent, and then since then, I guess, from now, 5 years from now, I guess I would say, hopefully I'll show up at any room in the world, and hopefully it'll be packed with strangers.
Now,
some not strangers.
If I come into your room and your CD player, who are you playing right now?
Who am I playing right now? I would say I'm listening to Baba Mal, the singer from Senegal.
Okay.
I'm listening to The Bird and the Bee, which is sort of like a smart jazz electro pop project on Blue Note. I'm listening to Sarah Vaughan because I never get tired of her. I'm listening to probably some vintage Mary Makeba too.
You know what I love about you is the fact that not only are you an amazing artist, but you also give back. Talk about your nonprofit.
Well, I started a nonprofit organization called New Africa Live because I really wanted to create a platform for contemporary African artists working in a multitude of disciplines. It started off really, the focus was, it's still very much about the music, but it's also about literary and visual arts. It's beyond the performing arts. So it's really about trying to carve out a space of belonging for all of them so that people know that we too as Africans evolve and are affected by things like globalization and digital exchange. And so if you have South African art, rock, and Nigerian soul and funk, or that people get that doesn't necessarily compromise who we are traditionally or culturally, it's just adding to it and sort of speaks to where we are today as an African nation and as a diaspora.
And growing up, your mom said to you something about the rain, and that's your album. Talk about that.
Well, she told me that the rains are always to be perceived as a blessing. And I think oftentimes in the Western world we think about the rain as a challenge or as a downer or something that's not always welcomed. But being from a tropical part of the world and where we're very much agricultural societies and it can get really hot, you always welcome the rain. And what that kind of taught me is that it's more about how we perceive the rains, understanding it's not about if it's a blessing or a challenge, but how we move through it.
And you have every song that you sing has somewhat of a story to it.
It is story based, yes, very much so. I try to tell stories.
Where do you get your inspiration?
From everyday occurrences, and from nature, or life, love, things that I witness or things that I feel like.
This interview.
This interview, East Lansing.
East Lansing. There you go.